Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 15? Which one is this?
26. Canto 3, Chapter 9, Text 26.
Brahma prays for creative energy, text number 26. The great sage Maitreya said, O Vidura, after observing the source of his appearance, namely the personality of Godhead, Brahma prayed for his mercy as far as his mind and words would permit him. Thus having prayed, he became silent, as if tired from his activities of penance, knowledge, and mental concentration. The sage Maitreya said, please repeat. The sage Maitreya said, O Vidura, after observing the source of his appearance, namely the personality of Godhead, Brahma prayed for his mercy as far as his mind and words would permit. Would permit him. Thus having prayed, he became silent, as if tired from his activities of penance, knowledge, and mental concentration. Purport. Brahma's enlightenment in knowledge was due to the Lord sitting within his heart. After being created, Brahma could not ascertain the source of his appearance, but after penance and mental concentration, he could see the source of his birth, and thus he became enlightened through his heart. The spiritual master outside and the spiritual master within are both representations of the Lord. Unless one has contact with such bona fide representations, one cannot claim to be a spiritual master. Lord Brahma had no opportunity to take the help of a spiritual master from outside, because at that time Brahma himself was the only creature in the universe. Therefore, on becoming satisfied by the prayers of Brahma, the Lord enlightened him about everything from within. Shri Chaitanya Manovistam Stapitamena Bhutale Sarmapakata Mayam Dharati Swapatantikam. So, this is a very instructive verse. And the very significant sentence here gives the definition of a bona fide spiritual master. We've heard Srila Prabhupada takes pains to use that adjective again and again and again all throughout his books. When he refers to spiritual master, he always states the bona fide spiritual master. There are many people who pose themselves as spiritual authorities, but one must be able to distinguish, or let's say, what rather distinguishes the bona fide spiritual master from others. And that is that he is in touch with the Lord in the heart. Prabhupada writes, unless one has contact with such bona fide representations, there he uses the word bona fide. That means the Lord without and the Lord within. One cannot claim to be a spiritual master. Because the neophyte devotee, as Prabhupada writes, has no possibility of reaching or hearing from the Lord within, or let's say rather ascertaining the voice of the Lord within. The Lord appears externally as the spiritual master to guide the living beings in their spiritual development. However, at some stage, we must come to that point where we are also in touch with the Lord in the heart, Antaryami. this should be the first goal of our devotional service. Then we will always be guided properly. So this is explained in the 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. In text number 6. We don't have any original Bhagavad Gita here. This is an adulterated purport. For him who has conquered the mind is the best of friends. Oh no, I'm sorry. Oh no. For one who has conquered the mind, the supersoul is already reached, for he has attained tranquility. To such a man, happiness and distress, heat, cold, honor and dishonor are all the same. So, the point here that's being made prior to this sloka is that the mind is the worst enemy or the best friend. And for one who has not conquered his mind, it's his worst enemy. The reason is because we all identify with the mind. We not only think we are the body, but we think we are the mind. We don't distinguish. And we don't understand. Of course, modern society, they have no idea that the mind is a separate energy that acts as the interface between the soul and the senses, or the body. So the mind is the agency through which all of the senses operate. Therefore, we don't understand that we have a mind. We think we are the mind, and therefore when the mind says, I want something, like, what's the business of the mind? Who knows?
Accepting and rejecting.
On the basis of?
Sense objects.
Huh?
The sense objects.
Yes, sense gratification. Now, the mind and the intelligence are extremely subtle, and one can only tell the difference between them by their function. Are you chanting japa? Not a good time to chant japa. Either chant or hear class, one or the other. The mind and the intelligence are extremely subtle. One can only understand the difference between them by their function. The function of the intelligence is to?
Discern.
Who else? Anybody? Accept and reject on the basis of one's long-term interest, or else what one perceives as one's long-term interest. For example, I perceive my long-term interest is to have enough money, have a good job, so that I can have a decent life. Therefore, I subordinate my immediate interests of doing whatever would be nice, fun, to going to school and getting an education so that my long-term interests will be properly served. So the mind accepts and rejects on the basis of sense gratification, what I like at the moment. The intelligence accepts and rejects on the basis of our perceived long-term interest, or in the case of a sadhaka, in one's actual long-term interest, which is, what's our long-term interest? The long-term goal that we're all striving for?
Love of God.
Yes, love of God and getting out of this miserable place and going back to Godhead, right? That's the ultimate goal, going back to Godhead. But that's a very lofty goal, and one cannot complete it in one step. Therefore, we need intermediate steps that we strive for, and step by step, then we accomplish the long-term goal. So the intermediate step is being explained here in the 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. One must learn how to bring the mind under control. And Krishna says, for one who has conquered the mind, the super soul is reached. Okay, there you go. That's how we come in contact with the super soul. Now, how many voices are there in the consciousness? Okay, the consciousness is the speaker who has the microphone. Okay, what do we have? We have the mind, we have the intelligence, we have the super soul. All of these are active in terms of giving us direction. And there's also the voice of the soul. So all of these are giving direction. So who is who? How do we distinguish? Is this my mind, my worst enemy? Is this the super soul, my best friend? How are we going to distinguish? In the conditioned state, we cannot. Therefore, our first duty, our first goal as being a yogi, or bhakti yogis, our first goal is to bring the mind under control so that we can be in contact, not only in contact with the super soul, but be able to distinguish the voice of the super soul. Then, the super soul will guide us from within, just as he is revealing himself to Lord Brahma, to Srila Prabhupada. I spoke about this a little bit the other day in terms of Srila Prabhupada, didn't I? Maybe that was during breakfast. Yeah. So, and to such a man. So here's the symptoms. How do we know when we've actually really conquered the mind?
It says heat and cold, happiness and distress is not disturbed.
Yeah, they're all the same. So, heat and cold are the same. If I put my hand in one bucket of cold water and the other one in one bucket of hot water, they're the same. What does that mean? Heat and cold are the same.
Happiness and misery is the same.
Can't hear you.
Oh, never mind.
Okay, these things represent duality, the dualities of this world. Okay? And what is being said here is that these dualities dissolve. Everybody in this world is struggling with duality, right? They want the happiness, but not the distress. They want the good and not the bad. And they think that they are two different things, but they are dualities and they are opposite sides of the same coin. One cannot have one without the other. It's impossible. That's why you hear in some yoga circles, you can be happy when you stop striving to be happy, right? It's oxymoron. You've heard that before? Anybody? Some yoga circles, they say like this. And everybody goes, oh, what does that mean? That's some kind of Zen saying, right? You can be happy when you stop trying to be happy. No, you can be happy when you control the mind. Why? Okay. These dualities, where do dualities come from? Are they natural in this world? Where do they come from? Come from the mind. The mind creates a duality. Why? Because the mind says, I like this and I don't like that. This is good, that's bad. United States is good, Russia is bad, right? Black is good now, white is bad. All of these things. All these dualities, these are coming from the mind. And so we create the duality that we suffer from in this world. And we cannot escape that until we bring the mind under control. Now, when we do that, what happens? Then we see this world as it is, everything in relationship to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Right? This is Krishna's creation. He is the owner of everything. Everything is coming from him. Therefore, what is good or bad? There's nothing good or bad. It's only how I'm trying to perceive it according to my limited perception and my conditioned nature. So, hot and cold are the same? What? That means I'm not distinguishing between these two things for sense gratification. It's just hot water and cold water. It's not that hot. So, you have the other way, right? Cold is good in the summer, hot is bad. In the winter, hot is good, cold is bad. But for one who's brought the mind under control, it's just hot and cold. It's just honor and dishonor. If somebody honors me, oh, everybody thinks, oh, they become puffed up. Oh, look see, everybody thinks, they give me so much praise. I'm such an important person. Yes, everybody can finally recognize my greatness. But for one who's brought his mind under control, he knows that whatever honor is being given to him is actually meant for Krishna. 529, who knows that sloka? You have to study Bhagavad Gita. Okay, 529. Ishite bihita sanke buddhayu gir imam shrinu. Can't remember. Oh no, I'm sorry, that's wrong Sanskrit. Bhaktaram jagat sapsam sarvalokam maheshwaram suridam sarvabhutanam gyanam shantam ridsyati. A person in full consciousness of me, knowing me to be the ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifice and austerities, the Supreme Lord of all planets and demigods, the benefactor and well-wisher of all living entities, attains peace from the pangs of material nature. Krishna is the enjoyer. He says later in another sloka, I am the only enjoyer and the only object of sacrifice. Those who do not recognize my true transcendental nature fall down. So here, Krishna is saying in regard to duality, right? He is a beneficiary of all sacrifices and austerities. He's the beneficiary of all honor. All honor goes to him. We say all glories to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, all glories to Sri Chaitanya, like that. And the benefactor, the well-wisher of all living entities. So Krishna is the supreme enjoyer. And not us, not our mind. So if somebody's offering us praise, this praise is being offered because, at least in terms of a sadhu, because he is representative of the Supreme Lord, not because it's being offered to him personally. Right? I'm the same person I was 50 years ago, Bhaktidan. Nobody was offering me any praise. I went to the Indian program last night. They're very cultured people, very nice, and they're all, according to their culture, they want to touch the feet of the sadhu and ask for the blessings and so on. That's not for me. You got to ring the bell before you close the curtain in there. You got to teach them.
Thank you.
Yes. Yeah, so all that honor goes to Krishna. It's not meant for me, right? If I think that people are honoring me, what's going to happen? I'm going to become puffed up and I'm going to fall down because I'm the enjoyer. And ultimately, enjoyment means sex life. And this is unfortunately what happens to many of the sannyasis or leaders in our society. They accept that honor for themselves. Ultimately, then they get deviated from the path of devotional service because they have not given up the consciousness of being the enjoyer. There's a particular consciousness, the mind. The mind thinks he's the enjoyer. So we have to observe the activities of the mind and see what the mind is doing. When the mind is trying to enjoy, got to beat him with a stick. No. That enjoyment is meant for Krishna, and we offer it up. So the praise goes up and the mercy comes down. He called happiness distress. Happiness and distress are the same thing. Because I'm not trying to enjoy this world, right? It's just things that happen, right? It's not, my distress. But people get distressed because their plans are destroyed, or they don't get what they want. Again, trying to be the enjoyer. Okay? If we take the position of servant of the Lord, they have a habit like that, huh? When we take the position of the servant of the Lord, then those things go away. And so they all become the same. The duality disappears when we bring the mind under control. The mind then becomes the servant and does not try to be the master. The mind has had unlimited carte blanche for many thousands of lives. We're just following the dictates of the mind, and the mind is taking us to hell lifetime after lifetime because the mind wants to enjoy. So we have to bring the mind under control. How? By understanding improper action, by understanding Krishna is the supreme enjoyer, and by following the instructions given by the Lord externally through the agency of the spiritual master. So this is our first goal, bringing the mind under control. Write that on your bathroom mirror. Control your mind. Remember that every day. Now, we have a process for bringing the mind under control. What is that called in our society?
Bhakti yoga.
More specifically?
Buddhi yoga.
No. Japa. Yes, japa. Japa is what we call meditation. Right? So this is a clue. We are supposed to meditate. And what do you do when you meditate? You focus the mind on one thing. Okay? That's what we're supposed to be doing. Focusing the mind on the sound of Krishna's name. Now, later in this 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna is complaining, it's impossible to control the mind. It's easier to control the wind. But Krishna answers, no, it is possible by constant practice and detachment. That means that one has to let go of whatever the thing the mind wants to focus on. Let go. Krishna says, from whatever and wherever the mind wanders due to its flickering and unsteady nature, one must certainly withdraw it and bring it back under the control of the self. So this is what we do during japa. The mind wanders, and we bring it back to hear the Maha Mantra. Again, the mind wanders. We bring it back to hear the Maha Mantra. The mind wanders. So this struggle is always going on. In the beginning, the mind is going to be difficult. But as we continue to practice our meditation, which we call it japa practice, then this becomes easier. We come to the stage where the mind is automatically more attracted to Krishna and does not deviate to these other thoughts. That takes some time. This is explained in Bhakti Aloka, I think. No, that's Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Vishwanath Chakravarti. Sandini, what is it? Madhurya Kandamini, yeah, thank you. So, yeah, different stages of japa. At first you fall asleep, in the early stages. Later on, the mind wanders, you don't even know how the mind starts going away. And then you bring it back. The next stage is, you don't even know when the mind comes back. The mind is gone, but then it comes back to japa, and you don't perceive that. And then the final stage is where you don't deviate at all, and you remain focused on the mantra. So one can judge how they are doing in their japa practice by those 4 stages, and observing what's going on while you chant your japa. So, this is our immediate goal, bringing the mind under control by the practice of japa, and we should use those words. Now it's time to practice japa meditation. Usually we say chant. Chanting doesn't mean anything. Okay? Chanting is simply to hear. Okay? So it's not about chanting, it's not about getting my rounds done as quickly as I can. So I say these words so that I can get on with the other things. The whole idea is to vibrate the sound of Krishna's name and meditate on that sound. Why? Because, the senses, the mind, and the intelligence, Krishna explains, are the sitting places of lust. What's lust? Doesn't mean only sexual desire. That means intense desire for anything. This is lust. So the senses, mind, and intelligence are the sitting places of lust. The intelligence is purified by reading Shastra. The senses are purified by performing acts of devotional service, cleaning the temple, serving the deities, and so on. The mind is purified by associating with the sound of Krishna's name. So if when we're chanting japa, we are not hearing japa, where's the mind? If the mind's gone someplace, it's not associating with Krishna's name. And this can happen even during kirtan, right? We do kirtan, the mind's gone all over the place. This is why kirtans sometimes are not very enlivening, because everybody's thinking of so many other things. Okay? When Lord Chaitanya was performing Harinam at Srinivasa's house, right, he would get together with his intimate associates, and they would have kirtan all night long. And it was a wonderful, joyous experience. Well, one night, they started chanting, and Lord Chaitanya says, wait a minute, something's wrong here. There's somebody else here. They looked around and they found Srinivasa's mother-in-law hiding under the bed. She wanted to also hear the kirtan. But she wasn't pure and she wasn't focused on Krishna. And so this happens also to a more limited degree for ourselves. If during the kirtan everybody is focused on chanting for the purpose of praising the Lord, then the kirtan has a very different quality than if everybody's meditating on what they got to do or what somebody said on Facebook. Not going to be the same thing. So this is the science of devotional service. We have to understand the science and we have to practice it. We have to do this job of practice. Now, when we bring the mind under control, then we have another stage, another threshold that we have to cross. And this is in the very end of Bhagavad Gita, kind of in the wrap up, the very last shots, the very last verses. Krishna says, "In all activities, just depend upon me and work always under my protection. In such devotional service, be fully conscious of me." Conscious of me how?
Thinking of me. Thinking of me.
Yeah, well, that's conscious of me. How? Thinking of Krishna in what way?
Favorably.
Yeah, okay. As the super soul. Right? We've been talking about contacting the super soul. Become conscious of me as a super soul. I'm talking to you. I'm in here. I'm talking to you. I'm giving you advice. Are you listening? Or are you not? So be conscious of me. So Prabhupada says, International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Conscious of Krishna. Externally and internally. Be fully conscious of me. Now the next one, this is the real deal here. Here's why. This is why we want to come in contact with the super soul. If you become conscious of me, you will pass over all the obstacles of conditioned life by my grace. No problem. Doesn't mean you won't have to struggle, but you will pass over all the obstacles of conditioned life. So Krishna is guiding us from within. Do this, don't do that. If, however, you do not work in such consciousness, but act through false ego, the mind, not hearing me, you will be lost. And so that's all the conditioned souls. They're lost. They're lost. They don't know, they're just blindly going through life. Now here, this is the point at which we get to surrender. We talked about surrender in one of the earlier slokas in Bhagavatam class, but this is what surrender really means. You hear the voice of Super Soul, are you going to follow it? Krishna, right? He can tell us anything. Remember, we were speaking the other day, I think I said this in class, that Prabhupada said to the professor, Krishna tells me what to say. Right? Didn't we say that in class? Yeah. Is anybody not here for that? Anybody not remember that? Yes, no, what?
I remember.
You heard it?
Oh, was it on Thursday? Was it on Thursday?
Okay, I'll repeat. So Prabhupada was speaking with a college professor one time, and Prabhupada told him, Krishna tells me what to say.
I remember.
Okay. And one of his leaders was there, tried to correct Prabhupada and tell him, what Prabhupada means is Krishna gives him the intelligence what to say. And Prabhupada says, no, Krishna tells me what to say. And I gave you several anecdotes about that. So Krishna is going to tell us what to say. Krishna is always telling us what to say and do, right? The Lord in the heart, this is inspiration. That's where inspiration comes from. It's not I did it, right? Van Gogh or James Cameron or whoever else is doing creative work, art, whatever, music. Where's that inspiration come from? Krishna's from inside. He's saying, do it like this. And so, if we hear that, we can do wonderful things. Yes?
I have this question for a
You have
very
to speak up.
I have a question for a very long time. I have this question.
Can you remember it at the end of class?
Sure, yes.
Okay. So he's speaking from within. Now we have the choice to listen to him or not, surrender. So Krishna can say anything. He's our dearmost friend. He can say something like, don't put your keys there, you'll forget them. Do we hear that? Or do we think, oh, this is, I don't want to bother with that now. Right? And then we go later, oh, where's my keys? Oh yeah, that was Krishna, my friend, the super soul. He was telling me, don't put my keys there. And I didn't listen. Or you can say, take your umbrella today, it's going to rain. And you go, I don't want to carry around the umbrella. We just think it's a thought. We think it's the mind. But it's Krishna, our dear friend. We don't take the umbrella and then we get wet. So he can say anything. And the question is, are we listening? So this requires some practice. And once we begin to be attentive to this, we'll see that every time we hear the voice of the super soul and we say no, later on we'll find out it was a mistake. Oh, that was a super soul. Let me try to be more attentive. Let me surrender to Krishna. So this is what surrender means. Surrender to the Supreme Lord within. So this is what Brahma did. Brahma heard the voice of the Lord and he didn't speculate, oh, this is my mind. He understood by hearing properly the super soul within what his situation was and what his duty was. He was there because he was the first created living being, and it was his responsibility to create this entire material world. Brahma is a secondary creator. Krishna provides the ingredients, and Brahma whips them into shape and creates all these fantastic worlds, fantastic bodies, and the circumstances by which all the living beings can go through progressive spiritual development. When we come in contact then with the super soul, and then when we surrender to the super soul, this is one of the qualifications of the bona fide spiritual master. Are we then qualified to be a spiritual master? There's two other criteria. Anybody know what they are? Anybody that's going to get initiated should understand what are the qualifications of a bona fide spiritual master, otherwise they should not take initiation.
One who is able to control the...
Are you speculating or do you know from Prabhupada's statements?
I'm thinking of Sri Ishopanishad.
You got to speak up for me, please.
I'm thinking of Sri Ishopanishad, one who can control the mind and senses and the urges of the tongue, belly and genitals.
Yeah, well, that's what we're talking about today, controlling the mind. So that's already dealt with here. Okay, other two qualifications.
Being part of the disciplic succession.
Somebody translate that for me, I didn't hear it.
Being part of the disciplic succession?
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Right. Comes in a bona fide disciplic succession from Krishna. That's the other one. Shishineta Gaurachandra ki. And the third thing, must have studied the Vedas, the conclusions of the Vedas, that's Srimad Bhagavatam, is the conclusions of the Vedas, and is able to convince others of their purports. In other words, he is able to speak Shastra. The spiritual master speaks from Shastra, doesn't invent his own ideas, right? He's repeating what was given in disciplic succession. That's why disciplic succession is important. And he understands the Shastra and how to express it in order to help others progress along their own spiritual path. That's what means spiritual master, right? So, spiritual master is not just somebody that has some seniority and decides, okay, well, I'm going to be a guru. They can do that in ISKCON. And a lot of them fall down. I have fallen down, unfortunately. So one must understand this science. And the beginning is, what's the beginning? What's our first goal?
Control the mind.
Bringing the mind under control. Write it on your bathroom mirror. See it every day. Remember that, especially before you begin to chant japa. Now it's time to practice controlling my mind. Now it's time to hear the sound of Krishna's name and meditate on that. Associate my mind with Krishna so that it becomes purified. This is the beginning of devotional service, and it's the end because for the advanced devotee, he's experiencing Krishna when he chants the holy name, he or she. They're experiencing Krishna dancing on their tongue. I wish they had millions of ears to hear Krishna's name. So Krishna is all wonderful, and as we continue our practice of japa, we will come to experience Krishna in the sound of his name. Okay, any questions? What time is it?
4 minutes past 8.
4 minutes past?
Past 8.
Oh, okay.
Would you like me?
Your question, yes.
Okay.
Shout.
So my question was, remember how you were talking about how Krishna is the controller,
Yeah.
and he's the enjoyer, and he also tells us what to do. And gives us the inspiration. So I was thinking about, how the murderers, the serial killers. And I was like,
Wait. How to make a wish?
Sorry?
How to make a wish?
No.
How the weather is?
No. Sorry.
I'm sorry, you have to no, when I say shout, I mean shout.
Okay. So I was talking about how the serial killers and the murderers.
The serial killers and the murderers.
Okay.
How they get inspiration.
Yes. Krishna is fulfilling, he's a self-sufficient philosopher who's fulfilling everyone's desire since time immemorial. Everyone comes to this material world to forget Krishna. But Krishna hasn't forgotten them. They have so many desires, and how are they going to fulfill them? With the help of the Supersoul. Of course, they don't know it's Krishna, or the artist, or James Cameron doesn't know it's Krishna, right? But it's Krishna. And the same thing with the serial killer. He has a desire. And Krishna is giving him the intelligence also. So, there's no good or bad in this material world. Right? That duality exists only in our minds. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta, did I say this the other day? Srila Bhakti Siddhanta said this world is perfect.
Yes.
Perfect. And whoever thinks that they can improve this world by one iota is an illusion. Oh, wait a minute. Maybe Bhaktisiddhanta's wrong? No, he's our Acharya, right? This material world is perfect. We can't understand how things are going on by cause and effect, karma over so many lifetimes and so on and so on. Oh yeah, I was telling that to the Indians the other night. Well, somebody's asking about a cow, somebody who's killing all the cows. Similar thing, killing cows, killing human beings, right? What's going on? Bhaktisiddhanta said this world is perfect. So, there's a lot of people that want to make the world better. And that's nice, they think they can do that, but they don't understand how to make the world better. We can't make the world better, but what our effort is to bring others to Krishna so that they can make themselves better. And then when more and more people make themselves better, this world will change. Prabhupada explained, this has convinced me to join his movement when I was a young man. He said, if you want to change the world, you have to change consciousness. Right? We have to change people's consciousness. And the easiest way to do that was with Krishna consciousness. So we should see our own consciousness changing, right? As we associate with the devotees, particularly with Shastra, and those experienced devotees who explain these things to us, our own consciousness is getting raised. And we then understand better what to do, what not to do. Does that make sense now?
Of course. Thank you.
Yes. Karen?
Just in regards to
Shout.
just in regards to what you were saying is to like good and bad is almost the same, right?
They're opposite sides of the same coin.
So, you know, when Arjuna seen the universal form of the Lord,
Yes.
he didn't appreciate, you know, that form.
He was bewildered because he could see everything there. It was overwhelming. Yeah, he didn't see, you know, he said, everything you desire to see, you can see in this form. Everything is there. Same thing when Mother Yashoda looked in Krishna's mouth. She saw the universal form. So, yeah, okay, what's the question?
So as far as despite, you know, there being you know, duality of the same coin, is it okay for devotees to have certain preference? Or is preference, you know, there's obviously Arjuna had preference to associate with the Krishna in this two-handed form.
Yeah, okay. By saying everything's, you know, you're getting into Mayavadi philosophy here. Everything's the same. It's not the same. Not that it's the same, right? There is a difference, but we don't perceive it as good or bad, like or dislike. In duality, we see it in terms of like and dislike. I want this, I don't want that. Okay, understood, right? You see the difference? It's not that they're the same, but not seeing it in terms of our personal preference, in terms of what I like, seeing it in relationship to Krishna, then the duality goes away. There's no good or bad in Krishna. Right? Understand?
question is about, you spoke about how the honor should be given to Krishna. What about dishonor?
What about dishonor? Dishonor is usually we think, oh, somebody doesn't like me. Therefore we become offended. Come on this side. Ladies, make room for her. Hare Krishna. Nice to see you. But you're coming at the tail end. Got to be here at 7.
Coming all the way from Melbourne, so of course it's going to take some time.
Okay. So we're talking about duality now. So, dishonor doesn't mean anything. Somebody doesn't like me, what do I care? When I want people to like me, to praise me, then dishonor is a bad thing, right? Oh, they don't like me. If I'm satisfied in my position as a servant to the Lord, okay, what does it matter? Like we go out on Harinam, there's people that criticize. At least in the early days, they'd drive by and they'd say, get a job. You know, what are you doing out on the street? Chanting, whiling away your time, sentimental fools. Go work. Work is everything. Yeah. So they, you know, so many criticisms come like that. They would criticize anybody. But because I'm not eager. Okay, so this is the definition of humility. Actually, Prabhupada gives in the 13th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Texts 8 to 12, there's a list of qualities. And the first one is humility. And in that purport, Prabhupada explains, he defines all of those qualities. And he explains that humility is not being free from the desire of being honored by others. So somebody that's truly humble, whether they praise him or criticize him, he doesn't care, right? Right? Because they're humble. They're not after that. They're satisfied in their relationship with the Lord. They don't need the honor of others. Okay? Now let's take that the other way. Spiritual master comes and all the disciples fall down and offer obeisances and they honor him. Who is that for?
For Krishna.
No. Okay. That's for them. Thank you. That's for them. By offering this act of submission and giving honor to the spiritual master, they benefit. Okay? And from the spiritual master's point of view, he takes that and he offers it up. Okay? But this act of giving honor to others, we do that, right, in Krishna consciousness. We honor the great saints. We honor our predecessor acharyas. Sure. It's not bad for us. That's proper for us. And for them, they offer it up.
I was just wondering if you could elaborate a bit more on the spiritual master, because we're discussing the spiritual master within and the spiritual master without. So we spoke a lot about how to recognize, how to discriminate. Am I hearing the mind, the intelligence, the super soul? So what about when we hear the spiritual master externally, how to recognize?
What do you mean, how to recognize? I've accepted this person as my spiritual master. What do you mean? What do you mean?
Well, for somebody who hasn't accepted a spiritual master.
Oh, Okay, well then there's those tests that we gave them, or they say the criteria of the bona fide spiritual master. Now the neophyte is always at a disadvantage in understanding who is bona fide. They don't know anything, right? For them, it's like in the army, right? The person who joined the day before you knows more than you do, right? He's your teacher. And that's true in any kind of field, okay? It was true in Christian consciousness. One devotee told me one time, there was one devotee he joined one day before he did. And Prabhupada told him, you should listen to him, he's your senior. One day. So, but maybe he's senior by previous birth also. We don't know. So the neophyte is at a decided disadvantage. So therefore, who's he going to get? How does he get a proper spiritual master? This depends on the purity of the heart. Right? What do you want? Again, Krishna is satisfying everybody's desires from time immemorial. You want to be cheated? Go to Osho. You want the bona fide real thing? Find somebody in Vaishnava Parampara. So, it depends on the purity of our heart. This is why it takes many, many lifetimes to fully, come to the stage of self-realization. There's quite a learning curve to go through. And then, we start off from where we left in our last lifetime. Okay? Some people, they read Bhagavad Gita and immediately they understand, this is the truth, this is what I want to do. Other people, they read it, this is interesting, yeah, pretty good. Okay, who else? What else is there? So, it depends on what they want. So, what is it? How's it said? When one is ready, the spiritual master appears. Something like that, right? Well, one is ready. Ready for what? Ready for how they want to pursue spiritual life. Like Prabhupada, when he came to the United States, at first he was going and spending time with the Uptown Swami. The Uptown Swami. Everybody know this story? So, Prabhupada went to New York City. He understood, this is where I should go because there's a lot of people there. And so he was alone and he heard about, it was a Dr. Mishra, I think. And so Dr. Mishra was uptown. Now in New York, there's downtown and uptown. Depends on, from the bottom of Manhattan to the higher boroughs, that's uptown. Downtown is where Prabhupada was in the Bowery, which was almost like the bohemian section of New York at that time. A lot of hippies, artists. It was the low rent district. And that's where all those kind of alternative style people congregated. So it was the perfect choice. Not knowing anybody, he went to Uptown, see the Uptown Swami. And the Uptown Swami would allow him to chant a little bit or to, especially to cook. He liked Prabhupada's cooking. And Prabhupada would cook for everybody and offer prasadam and serve them prasadam. But Dr. Mishra didn't like to let Prabhupada speak so much because he was a Mayavadi and Prabhupada was giving a different understanding of spiritual truth. Well, the Uptown Swami dressed in a suit and a tie. He had a lot of wealthy followers. And he was telling Prabhupada, well, if you want to be successful, you got to change your dress, take on, American appearance. And then, you look respectable, like respectable with suit and tie, people are going to then follow you. But Prabhupada did not want those kind of followers. People who were looking at what? The artificial external appearances. He was looking for those who were actually interested in finding the truth, regardless of what kind of package it came in. And this is why Krishna consciousness is challenging for many people. They see the devotees, we're all dressed differently, right? It used to be everybody had a shaved head, tilak, and, weird. And so, the package put a lot of people off. It was only those who could get past that by hearing the philosophy, understood, oh, yeah, this is the real thing. I'm sorry, I forgot your question.
I was asking about how the perspective.
Oh, a new devotee.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we get what we want. What do we want? It depends on the purity of our heart. Don't be afraid to ask. I gave a class before, and somebody up in Pomeroy, gave a class on japa, not too different from this one. And somebody said, well, I wish you would have, we should all chant around in japa together or something, but they didn't say it. They could have said that, So ask your questions. Or I'm sorry. Please, what are your questions? Don't be afraid to ask.
How many varieties are there in cleansing the heart or purifying, purifying the heart?
How many varieties are there?
Well, sometimes you hear, cleaning Krishna's pots, cleaning the heart.
How many different ways can we clean the heart?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so we hear that. By washing the pots, we wash our heart. That's true. Well, this is devotional service. Again, the senses are purified by positive activities of devotional service. Whether you're sweeping the floor, cleaning the pots, worshiping the deity, doing arti, using your body in some way in Christian service is cleansing the heart, cleansing the senses. So, unlimited varieties. Sweep the floor. If you're sweeping it and you think, let me do this nicely to please Krishna, it's Bhakti Yoga. If you're not thinking about that, you're missing an opportunity. Be Krishna conscious. Let me do this nicely to please Krishna. And we should all be doing that in all of our activities, especially in the temple. The temple should be spotlessly clean, as well as our houses where we live, because we should make our house also a temple of the Lord. If we do that, then our going to work to do a job to pay the rent becomes an act of Bhakti Yoga. That was my first service when I was a new devotee. I had to keep my job, donate half my paycheck. So my job was going to work, my service was going to work. Because it's supporting the temple. So if your house is a temple, and you live there as if it's a temple, right? You make the deities the center of your house, throw away your television, should have done that a long time ago. Then your house is, then everything you do there can be an act of devotional service. But you have to make your house like that. You make it a temple. And of course, you do it according to the standard that you can manage and maintain. So Gaura's got 2 little children, and he's not able to maintain a pristine environment all the time because children do what they do. So, his standard is going to be different from somebody that lives by themselves. Single adult, they should have a clean house. And unfortunately, I'll tell you, as I've traveled around, I stay with a lot of different devotees, and because I'm not a guru in ISKCON, they don't clean the place spotlessly before I come, and it's sad to see how some of these devotees are living. Right? Not understanding that we have to live in sattva, right? That means cleanliness. Their houses are quite dirty sometimes. So don't live like this. Live as if you're living in Krishna's temple and keep it spotlessly clean. Yes?
That's a kind of maybe off-topic question, but if people give you the very special flowers which have been offered to Krishna, and then later on they wither and they die, then what is the correct way to deal with the accumulation of those
Compost it.
things?
You put it in the compost bin.
It's all right to return them to the earth.
Or you can put it, throw it behind the other flowers in the garden where it won't be seen. Let it compost there. Set it with it, the rubbish that comes off of your plate. That'd be better. Okay, it's getting late, huh? What time? Oh yeah, okay, so we should stop. So thank you very much for your association. I don't know if I'm going to have the opportunity to give class again. Let you know, I brought some of my books. I don't want to carry them back. Have a look and take a book. You only give a donation, whatever it is, between $1,000 and $1,000. That'll be enough. I've brought several books on spiritual economics, some of the karma books. So do that. Many of my lectures are on my YouTube channel, Daneshwara Das, spelled like it's spelled on my book. And this class that I've given today, I've given many times. You'll be able to find that one there, and I've also recorded this one, and sooner or later it may get up there. But this is a topic that I speak about often because many devotees are not clear on the concept of japa, what it's for, and so on. And so, anyway, have a look around. Many of my lectures there have Russian translation because I spent so many years in Russian-speaking countries. So if you can wade through the Russian, some of my best lectures are there. I do have, I forget what they call it, not a channel, but threads. There's a thread for my best lectures. So some that I consider my better lectures are in that. And I've spoken a lot about Varnashram Dharma and spiritual economics, which we didn't get opportunity to speak about here. Economics is everywhere in our Shastra. Everywhere. It's intimately connected with self-realization. Because why? Because there's this thing called what is it? Aham Bhogi and Aham. I'm the enjoyer. I'm the doer. I'm the enjoyer. No, there's. Anyway, I'm the enjoyer. I'm the doer. So we're the doer of activities. Activity means, economics means activity. And if we want the result of our work, Krishna speaks about work, that's economics. He speaks about the result of work. He speaks about the motivation for work. this is all economics. And so this is what I read about in that spiritual economics book. So have a look at that. Take one. Many devotees have told me after reading spiritual economics, now I can understand Bhagavad Gita much better. Out of 700 verses of Bhagavad Gita, there's 400 verses in that book. So that book is actually, it uses economics as a way of explaining Bhagavad Gita, particularly the gunas. So anyway, have a look at those things, and I may be extending my stay. Yesterday I wasn't here. I had a problem with my eye. I have a problem with my eye. I went to the ophthalmologist. They gave me some prescription, but I can't get the medicine till today. She was also supposed to give me a prescription for antibiotics, which I did not get. I have another visit on Monday, and depending on what she says, because I don't know what she's going to say, and it's very difficult to get an appointment with an ophthalmologist where I am 2 months in advance. So I'm planning on extending my stay for another 3 days or so. Or not, let's see, probably till Friday this coming week. So I'll be around a few more days. Maybe I'll give a chance to give class, I don't know. So in any case, it's been a great pleasure to be able to serve you in speaking, and I hope that you've found some edification in my words. So Prabhupada ki Hare Krishna.